You're listening to the Essential WFDU HD1 TNEC.
89.1.
This is Focus, and our guest today is Dr. Nicholas Baldwin, British culture and history expert and Dean of Fairleigh Dickinson University's Roxton College. Good morning, welcome, and may I say, it's a treat to have you back on the show with us again.
It's an unmitigated delight to be back.
You know, I'm convinced. Let's just start it out by saying you can say anything with a British accent, and it just comes out great. My daughter feels the same way. By the way, my daughter says hello.
Well, hello back.
She was at Roxton.
Indeed.
In the fall and had a wonderful time.
Good.
Now, as we mentioned, Roxton College is celebrating its 50th. Anything new on that front that might be coming up during the year, or something that you might have done that we didn't get to discuss
We've done
time?
a whole lot for the 50th anniversary, both in terms of some of our programs, but also some renovation and restoration at the college. But in terms of programs, we had a very successful alumni week-long visit for people to come over to the college, where we did all sorts of things, including, for example, had a special reception at the House of Lords for the group. We also had a wonderful day where we had several hundred people, visiting speakers and families and so on over the last few years, attend the college. And the weather couldn't have been kinder, because the day before, as is not unusual, we had rain, and the day after, which is also not unusual, we had rain. But the day itself was clear blue sky and sunshine. And
lovely.
we were able to have a what we call a cream tea served on the back terrace outside, and it couldn't have been better if it had been a movie.
Oh, it sounds lovely. We play a promo here for Roxton College.
Thank you.
That goes like this: learn, experience, discover. What you'll find is yourself.
Well, I think that's very true.
And that sounds very intriguing. What do you interpret that as?
Well, I think what you see, or certainly what I and my colleagues in the teaching and other staff see, students come at a time in their life, and in many when they're ready, willing, able to learn, but they're also often, it's certainly not unusual, for the first time that they're, if not away from home, then 99 times out of 100 away from the United States. And they're in a different culture, so their senses are heightened. And as a result of that sort of combination of things, the impact that the experience has, and this is our intention anyway, but the impact that the experience has is very long-lasting indeed. It's a deep impact.
Absolutely. Now, of course, Roxton is, and I don't use this word lightly, dripping in history.
It certainly is. I mean, the oldest part of the building, the abbey itself, believe it or not, dates from 1217. And just to be clear, that's not just after lunch at midday. It's 1217 the year.
And is that when it was the medieval priory?
The original building, yes. The main part of today's abbey was constructed between about 1580 and 1620. And our modern wing was constructed in 1859.
But it's had many incarnations. It's been a family home,
yes.
a World War II warehouse.
Yes.
There have been many other...
And kings and queens and presidents have stayed there. President Teddy Roosevelt visited on 3 occasions, for example.
Okay.
But King Charles I, King James I, Queen Henrietta Maria, King George III, King George IV, Prince Frederick, all sorts of people.
Wow.
As well as me.
And speaking of you, is there a particular part of Roxton, a particular place within Roxton that particularly resonates with you?
No, I think it's the totality. I mean, I live on the estate, and I walk to work. If I'm slow, it might take me 45 seconds. Or if I get caught behind a squirrel on the route, that can delay me considerably. But I think just the walk down the driveway and seeing this building every day,
so there's no one
wonderful.
favorite spot that you might seek out?
No, there's so many. I spend more time in my office than anywhere else. But going through the rose garden and through the yew hedge there's an archway. I'm not literally walking through the hedge. And looking over her ladyship's lake is a wonderful spot. That's probably my favourite view across the estate. Yes.
It's been noted on Google in some of the information that you get that the most famous or infamous, if you prefer that, Lord Frederick North, who was Prime Minister when...
Yes, I might burst into tears during this part of the conversation.
But when we so callously split from the mother country.
And threw tea in the harbour. I mean, what was that about?
I really...
Outrageous behaviour. What a waste of tea.
It truly was. But it brings me to a political point. And there was, not too many months ago, an election.
Yes, in my country.
Which, by the way, I was astounded to learn that there are no fewer than 26 political parties in the United Kingdom.
Yes, they're not all represented in Parliament, but we have a number that are.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. It kind of reminded me of the Monty Python skit, the Society for Putting Things on Top of Other Things.
Indeed. Yes.
Has the furor of all of that, because there were people, it put David Cameron back on Downing Street, and then it put some of the leaders of the rival parties just out on the street.
Yes, well, the leader of the main opposition party, the Labour Party, resigned the following day,
saying that he had to. He felt that it was his...
He didn't have to. I mean, there's no legal requirement, but he felt there was a political requirement.
There was a political requirement.
And the leader of the Liberal Democrat Party, who had been Deputy Prime Minister in the previous coalition government, he also resigned. So both of those parties have now elected new leaders.
Has the furor of all of that died down a little bit?
No. We have a very interesting political dynamics in Britain at the moment for a variety of reasons. Firstly, what's happened to the Liberal Democrats? They went from 57 seats down to 8, and they had been a governing party, so they were massacred at the polls. The Labour Party, who had been expecting to win, were a long way from winning, and particularly in Scotland, they were decimated. There are 59 districts in Scotland electing members of Parliament to the British Parliament. Labour went into the election holding 41 of them. They came out of the election holding 1.
Do you think that has anything to do with the move for potential independence in Scotland?
Yes, it does, because the big winner, apart from, of course, David Cameron, the Conservatives, who ended up forming a majority government, but in Scotland, the 59 seats, the Nationalists went into the election holding 6 seats and came out of the election holding 56 seats. Yeah. There are only 3 seats in Scotland, 1 Labour, 1 Conservative, 1 Liberal Democrat, that aren't nationalist. So despite the fact that September's independence referendum was lost, and clearly lost in terms of independence for Scotland, and we were told throughout the campaign that it was once in a generational opportunity, I wouldn't be at all surprised to see another referendum within the next 5 years. And that's tied to perhaps one of the biggest issue in British government and politics at the moment, and that is a referendum on whether we withdraw from the European Union or not, which is a referendum that will take place, we're told, before the end of 2017. It may well be that England, for example, votes to leave the European Union, but the voters in Scotland vote to stay in the European Union, and that will be very interesting to see how that plays out for the United Kingdom.
What would be the ramifications of pulling out of the European Union?
It depends whether you are in favour of Britain's membership of the European Union or opposed to Britain's membership of the European Union. There's very little middle ground. Those who are opposed to Britain being part of the European Union will say we will save a considerable amount of money and be free to govern ourselves, we will recapture our sovereignty, and the future will be bright. Those who are opposed to Britain leaving the European Union will say that we cannot function as a small country by itself in an increasingly global world, and that Britain will suffer in many, many ways if we withdraw.
And that takes into consideration the fact that Britain does have many allies, even though they are a small country. Certainly the United States had patched up any differences they had in the past, and Britain is considered, if not our staunchest ally, certainly one of the staunchest.
Yes, Britain always tells itself, one of the reasons we didn't join the European Union at the very beginning was because of the special relationship with the United States. Someone once said that it's so special that only one member knows what it is. Or indeed, Britain has been described as the sort of little boy in the school yard who claims that the big boy is his friend so that no one else bullies him, and the big boy has no idea that the little boy is his friend. The special relationship, well, Harold Macmillan, Prime Minister between 1957 and 1963, when entertaining President Kennedy in Britain, was waxing lyrically about the wonders of our great special relationship, and President Kennedy apparently beckoned one of his staff over and said, "What's he talking about?" So I'm not sure in actual fact how special the special relationship is. I believe the United States has a special relationship, and that's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, of which Britain is part. But I'm not sure that any American president sits in the Oval Office thinking, I want to do X. Oh, what's Britain going to think? I think they will do it and see what happens.
Other than the fact they're either in or they're out
of Europe,
of the European Union, would there be any day-to-day changes within the country that would occur, either in the financial sector?
Well, there certainly could be. Firstly, there could be trade barriers put up against Britain, tariffs and so on. So the cost of living could go up. It will all rather depend on what the basis is for any negotiated withdrawal. I would find it hard to believe that we would be able to withdraw and nothing would change, that we'll be given the same preferential arrangements that we get as far as trade is concerned when we're inside as when we're outside. So I'm there will be changes like that. What those changes are, we'll have to see. It will be interesting to see where that goes in terms of, on my passport at the moment it says I'm a European Union citizen before it says I'm a citizen of the United Kingdom. Of course, that would change. I have at the moment rights to sue my government if they're not fulfilling their treaty obligations under the European treaties. Of course, all of that would be lost if we withdraw from the European community. At the moment, probably about 80% of the rules, laws, regulations that apply in Britain are rules and regulations that grow out of the institutions of the European Union, of which we are a part.
For the English people, is there a poll that's been done in terms of balance of percentages for and against?
Yes, there are a number. They've ebbed and flowed, and a lot of don't knows at the moment. The most recent poll I saw, which is perhaps only a month ago now, showed a small majority of those who had an opinion for staying in, but we're only really just getting the campaigns underway, and the government is actually renegotiating or trying to renegotiate the terms of our membership, and it will be those renegotiated terms that will be put to the vote. So we don't know yet what those renegotiated terms will be.
Well, we certainly have a number of our own, shall I say, unique candidates in an election that it does not even take place for at least another year.
Yes, I think the longest election we've had in Britain was 6 weeks.
I think the longest election in most any country. I honestly do not know of any other country where the day, I liken it to our Macy's parade, which is the parade on Thanksgiving. And the Macy's Day Parade, the moment the last float crosses the finish line, which is Santa Claus, they start planning for the next parade. I believe that's pretty much the same for American politics. The day the person is elected, the next day they start talking and
Yes.
planning for their reelection. We have some very unique candidates this year.
I
There
like the word
seems
unique.
I'm being very careful.
I will try to be too.
There seems to be a backlash against candidates who have any political background at all. And many of the masses seem to be going towards candidates who are in business or who have a business background. Do you follow American politics at all?
I do, and I certainly try to. I'm not sure that it's... Well, there are some similarities based on what you say. I think we can see in the most recent election in Canada, for example, where the Conservative government of Mr. Harper had been in power for almost 10 years. And the main thrust against actually the third party, the Canadian Liberal Party, was under Mr. Trudeau, Justin Trudeau, was that he's totally inexperienced. And how could someone so inexperienced actually govern the country? Well, that probably, in my estimation, backfired, because I think some people were actually quite relieved at the idea that it was, if not quite an outsider, but not a mainstream politician. We've had an element of that, and it is only an element of that. I wouldn't draw 100% conclusions from this, but the person elected leader of the Labour Party in England, although they have been a member of the legislature for 30 years, they have never held a leadership position, what we say on the front bench, either in government or indeed opposition. And that was one of the main reasons why he, in many people's views, those who were voting, was positive. He wasn't tainted, as they saw it, with the Blair years or the Brown years, the, as they would see it, lying about an illegal war or toadying up to the bankers and so on. They were looking for what they regarded, whether it's going to happen or not, but a real change, someone that's not tainted by the past. And I would say that may well be what you're going through in the United States as well. There's an element of that. It's not necessarily anti-politics or politicians, but anti a particular perceived type of politician. For example, in the Democrat Party, I'm not predicting he's going to win, but Bernie Sanders is seemingly quite popular amongst those who are activists in the Democratic Party or whatever. He's been a politician forever. In fact, someone told me the other day he must have been first in politics at the time of the creation. But I mean, so it's not anti-politics, but it's anti, if you like, the hands-on mainstream of politics.
But when it comes down to brass tacks, when you have to work within a congressional setting, isn't this really a case of just rearranging the furniture? Yes,
it could well be. In order to get something done, well, someone once said, politics is the art of the compromise. You have to compromise.
Absolutely.
You have to compromise in order to get something done. Now, if your agenda is to stop something being done, or that you don't believe anything should be done, generally speaking, then you're not looking to compromise. But if you are looking to govern a complicated industrial, post-industrial society, one has to be willing to compromise. That's not compromise on your principles, but compromise on the mechanics of achieving things.
But it seems like it's become easier to stonewall than to actually compromise.
And I think that's inherent, I don't wish to be insulting, but that's inherent in the type of political system you have in the United States, where, after all, the Founding Fathers created a system whereby the idea was that you could stop something being done because, well, if you read Ziegler and Dye's The Irony of Democracy, the idea is that white male property owners created a system in which white male property owners would be protected, that the masses, the masses are not white male property owners, but the masses would be protected, so the minority would be protected from the masses gaining power and thereby penalising white male property owners. So you have a system of checks and balances and separation of powers. It's very, very difficult to actually govern the United States to get something done. Now, some people would say that's a good thing, but that was the intention, to make it difficult.
But that's also a matter of interpretation.
Sure.
Too. Because you can read something and the same thing and come up with two different interpretations.
Yes, absolutely. But nevertheless, there is a system of checks and balances, a system of fragmentation. It's very, very difficult, and I'm not saying this by way of a value judgment. It's a different system, and there are positives and negatives in any political system. But it is very, very difficult to garner the levers of power in the United States. You get the House and Senate can contradict each other, the Congress and the President. The legislature and the executive can be held up by the judiciary. You've got the federal and the state level. It's very, very difficult, if not impossible, to garner the levers of power. For example, in contrast to my own country, where the government is the government because it controls the legislature. Now, there are checks and balances, as the government may well find out next week, when the House of Lords may well be blocking their attempt to do some financial benefit reforms. But the government ultimately will get its way with the support of the House of Commons, even if it's a case of waiting a few months, but they will get their way. In France, de Gaulle drew up the constitution for the Fifth Republic, and he put it in a very neat way. He said to the Prime Minister, the price of milk; to the President, all great matters of state. There are systems which deliver. The point is, the public then know whom to hold to account. Have they liked what the government in Britain has done? If so, vote for them again. If not, turf them out. You know who to blame. At the moment in the United States, if you're looking for someone to blame, who do you blame? There are those who would blame the President. There are those who blame the House. There are those who blame the Senate. There are those who blame a certain proportion in the House or a certain proportion in the Senate or whatever. And the politicians themselves, I wasn't able to do anything, blame them. I wasn't able to do anything, blame them. Don't blame me.
And so the newcomer who comes in and says, I will make a difference, I will make a change, even though that is almost an empty statement by virtue of past history, but it's believed.
Well, I have a concern in politics generally, not just this country or my own country, but generally in modern industrial, post-industrial societies, that people are concerned, upset with politics, depressed by politicians not delivering on their promises, and so fewer turnout declines and so on. So a politician has to generate even more enthusiasm, and they do that by, frankly, making outlandish promises that in their heart they know they cannot deliver
Absolutely.
upon. But it generates the support needed to get them elected. And I don't know how to break this. If I'm standing for election and say to you, oh, please vote for me, I'm going to do my best. I'm unlikely really to be able to do very much, but I'll really work hard and do my best for you. I'm not sure many people would run to support me. So politicians have to promise hope, and we will do this. Tomorrow can be a better day. Tomorrow will be better. We'll create a million new jobs.
You need to go past the distance to get them.
Yes, and it's a vicious spiral.
It is a vicious spiral
because the failure to deliver will put more and more people off.
Correct. Is there as much negative campaigning in Britain as there is here in America?
Actually, no, because it is controlled by law. If you are lying about your opponent, you can go before a special electoral court. Now, that's not to say that you can't be misleading about your opponent, but actual lying, you can. And if you were elected on a lie, you are then turfed out of office. We also have a very different system because there are very strict financial limits on what you can spend, very, very strict, and there's no buying of television or radio advertising time.
Amen.
You have to be newsworthy and be on the news, and the news media, in terms of electronic news media, radio and television, are bound by law to be impartial.
Okay, so I'm ready to go to England, and I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there, especially students, who are looking forward to doing that too. So give me a little bit of the process. If I was a student, and I've seen YouTube videos about Roxton. I've seen people who stayed there who claim they met a ghost at Roxton. It's fascinating. What are the steps?
Well, go to the Roxton Office for Study Abroad here on the Metropolitan Campus, or indeed at the Florham College campus, and pick up the application form, see what's necessary, fill it out, submit it. If you need any questions answered, then have a word with Brian Swansea, and if he can't answer, he can get in touch with me, and that's the beginning of the process. And it's an easy process if you meet the minimum requirements and so on, and then you'll buy a plane ticket and join us for a semester at Roxton.
And what would be the next semester coming? I understand you have short study.
We
summer,
have various
right?
short-term 1, 2, 3, and 4 week studies, but the semesters run from the very end of January to mid-May, or indeed the autumn semester, fall semester, would be the very end of August or beginning of September, depending on where a particular weekend falls, through to a little bit before Christmas. 15 weeks in duration.
Okay. We here, I don't know, do you celebrate Halloween in England the way it is here, with children dressing in costumes and going door to door begging, asking trick or treat?
Well, I remember some years ago, actually shortly after I started at Roxton, which has been 1 or 2 years ago, 31 years ago, we had some students get into trouble because they did dress up and go and knock on the doors in the village, and the response was for the occupants to call the police because they had no idea what was going on. If anyone did Halloween in England, it would essentially be very small children. It would not be 19, 20, 21-year-olds. And up until maybe 5 years ago, I had never seen pumpkins for sale at Halloween for Halloween, or indeed Halloween cards in the gift shops at home. But you're beginning to see that now. But I would still say that an adult, as in a 19, 20, 21, dressing up and going from door to door would be slightly surprising in England. It would be considerably surprising.
It is a billion, and I use the word billion because it's in capital B. Billions of dollars are spent here in America. The holidays become popular with decorations, with people having parties.
Well, I think, and one difference, if there are parties, I've seen over here people dressing up in all sorts of costumes. It could be a princess or Superman or whatever. If there are Halloween parties in England, people would only dress up as some sort of ghost, ghoul, witch, wizard or whatever, specific to Halloween, rather than just dress up.
I hope that anyone who is listening will take advantage of the ability to take a trip across the pond.
They won't regret it.
They will not regret it. I can say that not from personal experience, but from my daughter's experience. And it is a remarkable place with a remarkable dean.
Thank you.
And I can't thank you enough for being here. Once again, I hope you will come back, because we did not even get a chance to touch on all the entertainment that Britain has sent our way.
And I could have given away the secrets of Downton Abbey.
I know. No.
I won't.
You've been listening to FDU Focus, and our special guest, Dr. Nicholas Baldwin, British culture and history expert and dean of Fairleigh Dickinson University's Roxton College. We thank you very much again.
Thank you very much.
Until next time, stay focused.